The regular meeting of the Clarke County Board of Education will now come to order. So we will call the roll.
Mr. Davis.
Here.
Mr. Payne. Ms. Davis. Here. Mr. Bybee.
Here.
Ms. Ellis. Here. Mr. Worthy.
Here.
Mr. Williams. Ms. Williams. Mr. Knox.
Here.
Ms. Morton. Here.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I'd like for you to join us in a moment of silent meditation. We will follow that with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before I move the agenda, I just want to take a brief moment and say to the board and also Dr. Dean and others, I really appreciate all of the condolences and notes that I received during my brother's death. I traveled to Indiana, my wife and I, and the entire family last Thursday. And I just want you all to know that that was very beneficial to me because my brother and I, 18 months apart, we were raised like twins. But you truly helped me through tough times. And I've said this before, I said this when I was principal to see the show probably every day. Tough times never last, tough people do. So thank you very much. Okay, recognition and achievements and awards.
Good evening, Mr. Superintendent, Mr. President, and members of the board. Tonight I have the privilege of recognizing several outstanding individuals in the Clarke County School District. Honorees, when I call your name, please come to the front, accept your certificate, and shake the board member's hands. First, we would like to recognize two Clarke County High School students who achieved the status of semifinalists in the National Merit Scholarship Program. These students were among approximately 1.6 million who took the 2017 PSAT, which serves as the initial screening for applicants. Nearly 16,000 students across the nation were chosen as semifinalists based on their high-ranking scores. To become a finalist, these students will submit a detailed application to potentially be awarded scholarship money in the spring. Join me in congratulating our National Merit semifinalists, Johanna Hall and Henry Phillips. Tonight, at a cross-country meet. Are you here? Next, we would like to recognize Brendan Bowman for being named to the State School Superintendent Student Advisory Council for 2017-18. State School Superintendent Richard Wood selected 142 Georgia students to serve in his 2017-18 middle and high school advisory councils. Brendan was chosen to serve as an ambassador for Clarke Central High School. He will engage in discussions related to public education and will also participate in service projects to benefit schools and students. The selection process includes essay questions where applicants express their ideas for public education as well as their community service experience. Join me in congratulating Brendan again for this prestigious honor. Finally, we are honored and excited to recognize Dr. Stacy Carson as the 2017 National Distinguished Assistant Principal of the Year. The Georgia Association of Elementary School Principals announced Dr. Carson's nomination at the and she has since been recognized by the State School Superintendent for her award. The Assistant Principal Award is presented to an active assistant principal with a minimum of 2 years at their present school, holds a Georgia L5 certification, is an active member of the Georgia Association of Elementary School Principals, and an online administrator during the award year, and is not a statewide elected officer. We are excited to celebrate your accomplishment, Dr. Carson, and we're grateful for your commitment to leadership in the Clarke County School District. So we again, a round of applause for these brave representatives.
Dr. Meeks, and let me remind board members to turn your mic on. Now, the green circle is on.
Thank you, Mr. Worthy. Our next agenda item is board reports. Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped to D. If we can, are there any amendments offered for the agenda for tonight? If not, then we're seeking a motion to adopt the agenda for this evening.
Yeah, I need a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved by Ms. Davis, second by Mr. Payne. All in favor? Thank you. Motion passed. Okay,
All right, now, Mr. Worthy, we're at
Yes.
point in the agenda where we recognize visitors. We have speakers.
Okay, yes, we do have speakers for this evening, and I need to read a statement before I call on the first speaker. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes, and that will be flashed on the screen behind me here. At this point, remarks must be concluded. No speaker shall indulge in personal attacks while speaking. All comments are to be addressed directly to the Board of Education. To protect the privacy of our students, speakers should refrain from identifying specific students by name. Personal concerns are to be addressed in writing to the superintendent or the president of the Board of Education. Our first speaker this evening is Alyssa Diego, substitute applicant. You here? Apparently not. Our second speaker for this evening is Grady Martin, B Policy Changes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Grady Martin, and I come to share with you tonight, when it comes to the policy of DBA, why I want to encourage each of the board members tonight to support the rescind of DBA. Here's why. When I reflect back on the policy, and I think about 2016, there was no amendment to change the policy in 2016. There was no amendment to change the policy in 2014, 2012, 28, 26. So I asked myself this question: why now? What has changed? Why do we feel like we need to adopt a new policy or make amends to a policy that is in existence, where basically when you want to run for president or vice president, all you need is a majority of your colleagues sitting before you today? The only thing I can think of is one reason. And when I look at it, it really puts me in a position where I say, wow, here we go again. Because carrying out this policy basically says that we are going to put a target on one individual. That's what it does. I don't know if you looked at it when you talk about any policy, boys, but it puts a direct target on one individual. And as a stakeholder in this community, as a viable entity in this community, I cannot sit by and allow this to take place. So again, I urge you to please adopt, please vote yes on the rescind of the policy BBA. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Our next speaker is John Mara, e-policy changes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is John H. Morrow, Jr. I'm Franklin Professor of History at the University of Georgia, a position I've held for the last 28 years. My wife is a professor of African history department. I was very troubled by the D policy when I first read about it in the newspaper. You should be aware I was raised in the South. I wrote this. And what it made me think of was days in the past. I was born in 1944, and I've watched the South make progress and then regress in recent years, particularly under this new presidency. And when I saw the policy turning was suddenly instituted when you have an incoming superintendent who happens to be that, and the man who has been deemed worthy of being, sorry, no pun intended, worthy of being chairman of the board for all these years, suddenly finds himself removed by the introduction of a new policy. All I can think of, and I'm going to be a little more direct, is that you seemingly have a problem with two African-American males in leadership in this community in education. That's the way it looks, it appears. Maybe that's not what you had in mind, but I could not envision otherwise when all 5 white members of the board voted unanimously for that policy, and clearly probably had discussed it in advance. And if not, why the African-American members must not have been included, because their votes were all over the place. I would urge you to rescind what you've done. It is no excuse to say that you can't rescind the policy. That's an absurd statement. If it appears to be wrong, I would suggest that you think very seriously that appearances count. And to paraphrase the Bard, the Palace, Denmark, and Hamlet, something is rotten in the city of Athens, and it has to do with this board's policy right now. You need to rescind it. Make a serious mistake.
Thank you, Dr. Mara. Mr. Fred Smith, e-policy changes.
Mr. President, great to see you, Mr. Payne. Great to see you doing that. I really don't have too much to add to what I said last time, is that this policy should be rescinded because of, if I'm just going to skip to the end. We're in a situation in this community where the performance of our kids for the first time, when I say our kids, all our kids, has been laid on the table. And it's time for us to get on one accord and move forward and do something about that. It's that time. However, we cannot move forward until this is corrected, because there is a lot of bad feelings in the community about this policy. So I don't think we can come together the way we should come together until the wrong is corrected. So again, we're asking you to rescind the policy for a number of reasons. That I think as I talk to some of you individually, it seems to me it's a bad policy. A president who served only one term and out, and the way the policy is written, like someone said, it seems like it targets one person, because the policy not only prevents Mr. Worthy from running for president again, it also prevents him from running for vice president. And the policy is clearly, well, let me say this, some of you shaking your head, okay? The policy that posted online as a proposed policy, if that's the one that you approved, that is what it said. I went back and read it, I know I made comments. It said that all members of the board could vote for, could be elected president, I'm paraphrasing, or vice president, except for the president. So to me, that's what it says. Of course, we have put all our attention on the fact that it just said the president. But to me, if you read on there in that policy, and it even went to a second stage to say that he could even run for vice president. And I think that's a terrible thing. Again, it does look like you are after one person. So again, please rescind the policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Our next speaker is Karen LaRue, Spirit Performance Debate.
I attended last week's board session, and I appreciated the opportunity to hear the frank discussion of the issues on the agenda. It gave me a new appreciation for the work you do, given difficult and often thankless stuff. When it came time to discuss the data, though, all I heard was shock and disbelief, and I have to say that I'm shocked that you're shocked. At that work session, this question was raised, perhaps rhetorically, how did we get here? Well, I have an answer. You got here by ignoring the voices of teachers. You got here by allowing the superintendent to say to teachers, your planning time is no good to be spent in data teams. Plan on your own time, and if you don't like it, good luck finding another job. And now, after years of teachers collecting and analyzing data, making instruction based around the data, defending their jobs based on the data, we find out that no one ever looked at the data in a meaningful way. This should not be a shock to anyone. You've had access to all of this information via Apple Seed all along. It was also said at that work session, we weren't almost as bad. You're not bad now, and you weren't bad then, but you were irresponsible. You were a rubber stamp board who lavished praise on the superintendent who chewed the stats. And you did this even as he was exiting the district. I hope the main takeaway from this data is an awakening. You have a responsibility to the students to be more than yes men. And about that data, it's an excellent starting point, but I worry that we may jump to solutions too quickly. The disparity of discipline and achievement data is alarming, but we need more information before we can act meaningfully. For instance, in one report, African American students made up 84% of behavioral incidents while only comprising 38% of the population. What we don't know, though, is what percentage of Black student population that involves. If 70% of all Black students are involved in behavior incidents, that would necessitate a look at the discipline system school-wide, a search for new behavior models, and more training for staff. However, if the percentage of African American students involved is closer to 15%, that would not warrant a broad-scale revision at the school level. Rather, it would indicate a system-wide failure to meet the needs of a few students. I would want to look at that physical, emotional, and mental needs are I would want to look at what physical, mental, and emotional needs are unmet, and how the community as a whole could better serve at-risk students. The achievement data was equally concerning, showing alarming disparities between the percentages of white and Black students achieving proficiency. Not proficient is comprised of level 1 and level 2 scores of milestones then. And if I understand it correctly, level 1 is failing and level 2 is not. If we're going to look at any not proficient score as failing from a teacher and school perspective, are we then going to align our promotion and retention criteria accordingly? It would be valuable to see the number of students in each level before making assumptions about how to affect change. Looking again at my notes from the work session, I see this. The people in schools are going to have to do more work. Please know that the teachers never stop working. They are constantly asked to do more, and they rise to the challenge. It's now up to you to make sure that that work is done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burke. And I want to say thanks to all of you for your comments this evening. Really appreciate that. And this point, we're going to go ahead and move the agenda, Dr. Means. We are down to board reports now.
Yes, sir. First report is the GSBA report.
I don't have a report. GSBA is looking forward to coming at the annual meeting, and we all get up, come to the class, so we all get ready. We'll come.
You know when it is?
Yeah.
Do you know when the meeting? The meeting date?
Yeah, it's in December. Our annual meeting is December.
Government Relations Committee.
Government relations, we had I think we kind of talked about this, but we were given some data, some information about, what's your name? I should let Carol do this. I hate to put Carol on the spot.
She was the deputy director of the House Research Center.
And we're going to be using QBE as one of our platform data. I think last week, Greg had chimed in on that. Is there anything else, Greg, from your perspective on that meeting? Other than that, we're going to do QBE as one of our platforms. And if not, don't struggle with it.
Yeah, I think it was, what it was really pointing out is the fact that something that Larry Hamill's been saying all along, that we certainly need to adjust QBE for inflation. It hasn't been changed since the mid-'80s. And so when we start looking at funding issues in school systems, that's important.
And I think we're trying to get Dana Ricks to come and talk about, we're going to try to get her for our next meeting. It will be after the first year, so we're probably going to have to come up with our platform on our own, or look at last year's. Is that, that's our report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Dr. Means?
Finance Committee.
No, I don't have anything.
Thank you. Policy Committee.
I do not have a report other than, if you haven't answered the doodle poll to get back together with Dr. Osbury, please do. I haven't checked it to see if, so maybe tonight, if you'll check in with Amy if you haven't responded, and let's get that on everybody's calendar, because it's an all-day work session on Saturday, approaching the holidays, and I would really like to know when that's going to be. And I'm looking forward to the work. And then if y'all will allow me to do a quick Foundation for Excellence report and a policy committee report, is that okay? Sure. I didn't add it to the agenda, I forgot. But the Foundation for Excellence annual banquet was this week on Monday night, and Jared and Carol and I think attended from the board, and it was, and Dr. Means was of course there, and it was a really lovely event and a celebration of some outstanding teachers in our district. And so by virtue of my position on this Board of Education, I'm placed on that Board of Trustees as the Board of Education representative. So I just wanted to give a quick report that was this week, and it was a great different format this year, and it was a nice celebration of the good all the folks we have in town. So it was a sweet event.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Property Committee.
I'm happy to report we have sold in property, we have bought in property. We're holding everything normal, just like it is.
Thank you, Mr. We have some new reports just added. The first is East Lake and Drew Charter School visit. And there were a number of board members who attended this visit in September. There's a new report.
Do we have to,
Excuse me?
do we have to go?
There were, actually there was a quorum of board members who attended. attended that visit?
I'll be happy to share my experience. I have very anxiously waited an opportunity to go to the Drew Charter School with that transformation of the East Lake community in DeKalb County. I have relatives actually who live in that community, and I am related to a lot of people across the Georgia. But I did not expect, could not anticipate what I would see in the early learning center in the Tree K and walk into a school where I think it was the high school that we went into, and as we crossed pretty much an atrium like this, there was a full-fledged YMCA with all the programs and the entire community there doing their exercises. There was a swimming pool, and I mean, just to see that transformation in that neighborhood was amazing. And then the students, of course, were truly engaged in what I would consider collegiate campus style assemblies, where they were meeting with their peer groups. It seemed like, and there seemed to be an openness about the learning environment. It seemed very inviting. In the earlier grades, it looked a lot like some of our elementary schools. The kids were very focused. They were excited about the things that they were engaged in. So I really do believe that having actually tried to mentor math at middle school in that community, that this was a transformation for what happened in that neighborhood. So I'm excited about what I saw with Drew Charter School and the high school, and that coming together of the community to have a YMCA actually physically located in that space was amazing. We didn't really, I didn't pay attention to things. We had other services there, but you know, things that impressed me. So I think it was great. The building was open, it was huge. I just never thought that neighborhood would be transformed like that. So it was a good experience for me. So thank you for that opportunity to share that with all of you. Maybe we should be great next time. Let's go.
And if I can add to that, maybe even speak to the next time as well, first looking at this conference. So there, and put this in context, at our work session, Dr. Means started a conversation around collective impact, and the idea there is how can we do big projects that can have meaningful impact on the achievement of our kids, and that field trip to Drew and the Purposeful Conference that some of the board members attended, I think gave us some good time to think about what the possibilities are. Purposeful is one of many potential models out there. I think maybe some impressive work, as Linda stated. I think there's a lot of questions outstanding about how well their philosophy meshes with the philosophy of the board and of the Athens community at large, all of which will work out at some point. But the general work of thinking big picture about how to affect transformational change for some of our schools was I think my mindset and the mindset of the board members going into some of these activities, just to see what else other people are trying, to see what's working some other places.
We have others?
I need to say my praises for the charter school and the things that they did to make their experience unique for their community. And that is the hope for our local school governance team. They move forward with making the experience unique for our kids at each of our 21 schools. They will have the autonomy, the support, and the community engagement to be very successful with whatever they determine should be the path that we should follow to get the best results for our kids.
Mr. Davis took the place and he was part of an economic development tour. Mr. Davis.
First off, I want to tell all the young people that try to lead by example. I go to class, and it's through Ollie, which is you got to be old though. You got to be over 50. But anyway, it's run by it's part of kind of the appendage of UGA. But anyway, they offered a day tour of Clarke County, and it's focusing on economic development. We were led by Brian Moore, who was ACC Director of Economic Development, and boy, I learned a lot. It was consistent with my view that we have, our students do not have, are not aware of a lot of the opportunities that we have in Clarke County. And I think as a result of that, we don't have more opportunities. What we did was we toured a couple of places that are becoming breweries. And of course, you know, that type of manufacturing has job opportunities. Stopped by Jerry Joe's, and never saw that before, but that was interesting. But more to the point, we also went to the technical college, Athens Technical College, and I saw my first $80,000 dummy. So it was just kind of intriguing. I never thought you could put $80,000 into a piece of rubber. But it was just, I mean, there was so much stuff offered at Athens Tech, and I really don't know how aware our students are. And I'm particularly looking at students who, for whatever reason, are not looking forward to going to a four-year college, getting $20,000 in debt, and then trying to find a job. There are other options out there. We also went to Eaton Industries, and I was very impressed with the way that that manufacturing outfit operates. What my takeaway is that first off, biotech is a field that we really need to help our young people see that as an option, as well as robotic manufacturing. We've got robotic manufacturing large scale in Clarke County, and I never knew about it. These places are begging for young people to train in. One thing that we've got our what's our program? No, it's not dual enrollment. That's the whole thing. It's the partnership. Our Georgia partnership.
Great Promise Partnership.
Yeah, Great Promise Partnership. We have 75 positions. We've got room for 200 is what the aspirations are. These are paid positions for our young people. And I just think that there's a lot that the school system can do, and I think that Dr. Means has already kind of set a path forward so that we can offer all our students opportunities post-high school and to encourage them. And so, what I would like to propose is that we contact the development department, the economic development department, and have the entire school board go on a pretty intensive tour of what is in the area. Because I really think that there's a lot that is being offered there, and a lot of partnerships to be made that the school board could benefit by being aware of. Thank you.
We have one final report on a convening that was titled School to Prison Pipeline that a number of board members attended.
Okay. I don't mind talking about that too. The School to Prison Pipeline is a program that is being initiated by the Athens Anti-Discrimination Movement. They are reaching out to work with the school district, and they're also reaching out to work with juvenile justice. What their goal is to refocus young people who are getting in trouble at an early age and redirect them into positive things. And so they're bringing a lot of people together for that purpose, and I look forward to over a number of years being able to work with them both as an individual and also collectively that the school board would be able to work with them in some capacity. Because I think they're well-meaning and there's a lot of energy there, and they offer, it's nice to see young people wanting to help young people. It's just very encouraging.
I also attended that, but I attended it from the perspective of our school code of conduct. Dawn gave me a quick tutoring. So I was able to present the things that the district is doing to try to divert kids being put out of school on, I'm not going to say simple offenses, but going through a process that they don't get a police record over some charges, but how our counselors and schools are working with our students. So I think that since we did that forum where we had community input after the Cedar Shoals incident, I think that the board did listen and have revised our student code of conduct. I'm not going to say everything's perfect, but I do think that the board has heard and is working to try to divert kids from prison by bringing in other services. So I'm real pleased about where we're headed in our participation in the school to pipeline program.
Anyone else? Dr. Means?
Thank you, Mr. Worthy. If you don't mind, I'll go into the superintendent's report.
Absolutely.
One of our guest citizens asked me this evening before the meeting started, so this is meeting what for you? How many meetings have you been part of? So this is my third meeting as superintendent of business here in Clarke County. But I don't want to make an assumption that people know who I am. So please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Damon Means. I am a native of Wisconsin, southeastern Wisconsin. Yes, there are black people who live in Wisconsin. I've had that question asked of me. I was a superintendent of schools for 10 years in the state of Wisconsin, so the superintendency is not new to me. I've been asked why was Clarke County an appealing district to me. It was appealing because I got this sense that there was a genuine feeling and desire, commitment to engage in true turnaround work, school turnaround work. I got the impression that the board, in the community, the school staff obviously understood what the current environment and current status of performance was for students, and that you wanted to see a change. And so based on those impressions, based on engaging in a process where I interviewed a number of times with this group and met the community, I convinced my wife to leave our home state and move to the state of Georgia. I have a 5-year-old kindergarten student who is a student at Timothy Elementary School. And we're very, very pleased with Timothy and the work that's happening there. But the reason why I'm here, the reason why I am here, I'm not ego-driven in any way, shape, or form. I'm here because a vast majority of the children who attend the schools in Clarke County are children of color. And when I look at the data, when I saw this data, and I shared this with our cabinet, the data forces you to cry. Is that poor? Is that poor? And so I'm committed to the work here, but I want to come back to the word committed in a second. The work that we have to do will require a level of focus and intentionality in being deliberate in ways that we may have not been deliberate before. And when I say we, I mean everyone in this community. And so it is critical that staff members, it starts with our teachers. And I'll come back to the teachers in a second. Parents, people who are interested in this community, to stay with us as we engage in this difficult work. It is difficult work. But I firmly believe that a child of color who lives in Athens, Clarke County can do the same academic work as a child who lives in Oconee County, and maybe what. I believe that in my soul. But that this work that we have to engage in has to start with everyone believing it. And so some people have heard me use this phrase, I'll say it here. Poverty is a factor, but it's not a barrier. It's a factor, but it's not a barrier. And what it should inform us to do is to deploy more resources to children who may need those resources. Deploy the resources to schools and teachers who are working with kids who may be trapped in the unforgiving cycle of poverty. This is just baseline data, but it's important if we're going to do work to know what our baseline is. The data is being presented not to say someone wasn't doing a job or who wasn't paying attention to what happened in the past. Is to say this is where we're starting. Our theme this year is Forward Together. And that's our theme because as I've transitioned into this community and school system, the name of my predecessor continues to come up. And what happened in the past and decisions that were made, it continues to come up. And candidly, 12 weeks in Clarke County feels a little bit longer, but it's been 12 weeks since I've been here. And it's not going to help us collectively move forward together if we keep talking about the past. The past is what it is, but we're intelligent enough and people are invested enough to move forward together. Now, moving forward together will mean doing things differently. We can't continue to do things that we have done and assume that we're going to get a different result. Victoria Burkhart has a quote where she says, "Your organization is perfectly designed for the results it's getting." So right now, currently, the Clarke County School District is perfectly designed for the results we're currently getting. I've been a superintendent for 10 years. I've done this work. I know what it takes. And I'm humbled and honored that we have an administrative team and teachers that I've met throughout this system who said, we understand what we need to do. We're ready to collaborate with you. Let's move forward together. At the core, it's not about being someone who holds a positional title for me in leadership. I'm just, at the core, I used to be a social studies teacher. And I was a decent athletic coach. I coached football, basketball, and girls track. That was actually my favorite sport to coach. There were egos involved with girls track. I coached varsity football, and that was a different story. But at the core, I believe that my job is to be an instructor, if you will, someone who provides opportunities for people who are really invested in doing good work to learn new techniques and then take that new learning that they gain, because they're really smart people already, and allow it to kind of morph into something different. We started that process. So last month in September, we had a training around how to use data from a SMART goal perspective to allow teachers voice to direct their schools. We trained our instructional coaches and our principals in that work, and we're really excited about bringing that trainer back to allow more teachers to receive the training. Our cabinet received training just 2 weeks ago around something called Trago Ed. It's something that's used in the corporate sector around analytical processes and helping people make good decisions. And when you make decisions, that you can share those decisions with the public. And that people understand from a transparency standpoint what's happening. I shared with the board and the community that I would listen closely as I transitioned in. And one of the things that I heard was there's a need for transparency. I always assume that people come to the table with good intentions. So I don't think anyone intends to not be transparent. Maybe sometimes you just don't have a good process and procedures that allows you to share how you came to a certain decision. So we'll continue to train in that space, and we're going to expand our training there as well. We had training just this past Monday around culturally responsive teaching and a growth mindset, which I believe is critical. We didn't start our work saying this is how you need to teach math differently or teach literacy differently. We started with the heart. Because if you truly don't believe that children who are of color and who are poor can't achieve, then they won't. It'll be a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so we had speakers work with our staff, our secondary staff, on believing that you should have a growth mindset for every child. And that you have to be culturally responsive, not relevant. Sometimes the terminology is that teachers should be involved in culturally relevant teaching. I don't want teachers to be relevant. I want them to be responsive. And that goes for all of us. I understand that there's a deep pain and hurt in this community for a lot of different reasons. And when you are a neophyte to a community, you want to be respectful of the culture. And so I want to respect and honor the fact that people are in pain and hurt. Please know I am also in pain and I'm hurting for children who are in this cycle of poor performance. I'm hurt for teachers who are working hard to try to turn things around. It's not anyone's fault that we are where we are right now. I believe that we're a programs-rich, a systems-poor school system. We have a lot of programs. We have a lot of stuff. We don't have a lot of systems. And if you're not able to measure what you're trying to do with key performance indicators, and you don't have data that you can look to constantly, it's impossible for a board to measure if things are being effective or not. And then, frankly, you get into a cult of personality versus looking at the data. I've shared with this board, and I've shared with the community, I've shared with our administrative team, hold me accountable, hold us accountable, let's look at data. Because I think when you look at the data, it will show you that you have to do things differently. So we're going to take a systems thinking approach to this world. We're going to take an approach of we all have to professionally stretch ourselves. Again, not saying that people aren't working hard now, they are. But I shared this at the work session last week. If you're going to use a sports analogy, and I try to stay away from it. So I'm going to try to do a fine arts and a sports analogy. I think what we have done in the Clarke County school system is that if you take a football analogy, we've been running flea flickers and trick plays, and we haven't concentrated on how to do the basics around tackling and blocking. Sometimes teaching people how to tackle and block isn't that fun. If you can't tell, I was a former football player by my physique. And there were days where you just literally had to push a piece of metal around to understand how to do the work that I was asked to do in my younger days, much younger days, in blocking and tackling. Being a father of a daughter, I would go to the fine arts by saying that you cannot be a good dancer unless you have a good base and foundation before you go into your moves. So my point is this school system has to get back to the basics. But we can't get to the basics until we're all focused. I'm pleased to say I believe our staff is focused. It's going to require us to be united in terms of how we do our work. Just this week, we conducted a survey of our elementary and middle school principals, asking them, so what materials are you using to teach reading and writing in the Clarke County School District? And there was variance, significant variance that should not be. It varied in terms of the amount of time that schools invested in teaching reading. It ranged between 90 minutes to 125 minutes, depending on the school. The materials that were used differed by school. By no means do I want to take away autonomy from staff members, but if we're going to improve as a system, then we have to learn together. You can't conduct district-wide professional development if 3 schools on the west side are using certain materials and 4 schools on the east side are using materials. And then it flies in the face of those in the community who will say, but our kids can't do certain things because they're transient or they're poor. Well, if they are, then we have to be more deliberate about the materials that we're providing. Because if you know that children are transient, how are we setting them up for success if they live in one area and they're receiving instruction in teaching literacy with a set of materials? They move 4 months later into another school that's using something totally different. Last night, I had, it's always humbling to have a teacher-parent conference for your child. My wife's is an educator. She is an educator. And as we walked out, while we were happy with our child, my heart breaks and drives me every day. It drove me from Milwaukee, Wisconsin to Athens, Georgia, because I know that there are families who don't have the same voice that my family has, that don't have the same insight that we have in terms of the profession. And I'm going to claw and fight every day for those folks. So it shouldn't matter if you live in Nellie B or 5 Points. Kids deserve the same opportunity. And we have an obligation as a system to then react if a principal says, but I need more resources in a certain school based on my demographics, then we need to get those materials to those educators. I'll conclude by saying this, Mr. Worthy and the board. I'm pretty confident that this turnaround work can happen. That this is our baseline data and it will improve. But the level of commitment has to go even further. See, in education, there are some people who are just compliant, and I guess it's in any job. There are people who are compliant or they're committed. Compliant or committed. For us to really engage in the work that needs to happen, there's a third rail, if you will, that needs to happen. We don't need you to be compliant. We don't need you to be committed. We need you to be convicted around this work. If you're not convicted, see, if you're not convicted, then it won't happen. This work that needs to happen for these children won't happen. Because at the core, this is love work. And I've shared this with people before. We all love something. I'm not talking about people, but something. Some people love to shop. Some people love UGA football. A lot of people love Philadelphia. I don't know what that love is, but when I watch people, that love drives them to persevere and to do whatever they need to do to get the job done. And so what we're asking our teachers to do is to love our kids, because this data is just data right now. So as we talked about last week, I don't want to dwell on the numbers right now. What I would tell you is that we're putting systems in place, not initiatives, but systems that should live well beyond Damon Means, or any teacher. Because at the core, when these systems are put in place, it's not about a personality, it's about the kids that it serves. And so I'm really excited about the opportunity that's ahead of us. It's an opportunity more than anything else. I don't want to dwell on why the numbers aren't where they are right now. What I want to say is that we have opportunity. We have a highly engaged community with our local school governance teams and people who just care about children. See, one of the gentlemen I met with earlier this week, I just met with some gentlemen this week that run a football league. And these men are paying money out of their own pockets for these young men. And it just isn't the young men, it's the cheerleaders, it's the moms and dads who are excited about seeing their children participate in our community in a positive way. This work can happen. It has worked in other places, but we're gonna have to stay focused, deliberate, and intentional. So I'm sorry for the long conversation. We will continue to give you updates on things that we're doing. We're going to operationalize this work now through our strategic plan. The strategic plan is critical to the work that we do. We're going to operationalize the work by looking at our curriculum and making sure that we have professional development that will build the capacity of teachers. It's about building their capacity and then building leaders within that opportunity. We're starting that work now. We'll continue to do the work. It's high energy work. It's collaborative work. I've been told I'm having more meetings and having more conversations with people than normal, and that's okay. Because until you have voices in the room and you're doing things that are research-based, then it doesn't work. So I'm excited about the opportunity. I'm excited about people holding us responsible for increasing the work. Together, we will move forward and change this for the kids. That's my report, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Means, and you're still on. We're going to move the agenda down to item F, policy discussion.
We have a total of 2 policies and a total of, looks like 3 regulations and 1 exhibit that must be on public review for 4 weeks.
Okay.
And the policies, I'll read them off, is policy JK, regulation JK, R, parens 1, close parens, regulation JK, R, paren 2, close paren, exhibit JK, -E, paren 1, close paren, policy DJE, and regulation DJE, -R, paren 1, close paren.
Okay, you got the recommendation from the superintendent. We have 2 policies, I believe 3 regulations, and 1 exhibit. I need a motion to put these policies out for 30 days. Moved by Dr. Knox, got a second by Ms. Thornton. All in favor? Thank you very much. Motion passed. Down to item G, action items.
We have action items to approve the minutes of previous meetings of the work session of August 3rd, regular meeting of August 10th, work session of September 7th, and regular meeting of September 14th.
Okay, the minutes, and of course, we had the packet for several days now. I mean, we reviewed those minutes, so I need a motion for. Okay, moved by Mr. Payne. Got a second on that, second by Ms. Thornton. Any questions pertaining to these minutes? Any questions? All in favor? Motion passed. Thank you very much.
We have a second action item of the financial reports of June, July, and August of 2017 being submitted to the board's attention, sir.
Okay, the next action item is financial report, June, July, and August 2017. Need a motion on that? Moved by Ms. Davis, got a second on that, second by Ms. Thornton. Any questions about the financial report? Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. Motion passed. Okay.
We have a third item on policies to adopt/rescind. It's policy IDCH, dual enrollment / move on when ready.
Okay, you heard the recommendation from Dr. Means. That's policy IDCH, dual enrollment, move on when ready. need a motion on that.
I move.
Moved by Mr. Payne, got a second on that, second by Dr. Knox. Any questions pertaining to this policy? Any questions?
Someone just kind of brushed me on
This was the policy that Lawrence Harris brought. So basically, at its core, I guess, the DOE changed the name from Move On, Ready to Dual Enrollment.
Okay, gotcha.
There, we made some other minor, but it was basically straight from the DOE. Right?
Ms.
The
Stewart?
DOE that changed the
Yes,
name.
Ms. Stewart, is a good question. The Georgia Department of Education changed the name back to dual enrollment. It was at first Move On when ready, and there was subsequently some changes to the language that Associate Superintendent of Policy and Support Services for Students, Dr. Dawn Myers, put in place. And so I know that she's still having conversations behind the scenes with our high school principals in terms of how to operationalize this, Mr. But that's the reason why this is in front of me this evening.
I think another important part of that was that the counseling for the upcoming year is moved earlier, so people
Get some more time.
Okay, any further questions? Any further questions? All in favor? Thank you. Motion passed. Okay, we're down to the consent agenda, Dr. Leeds.
We have 3 consent agenda items. It's out-of-state overnight field trips, the carryover budget for fiscal year 17 to 18 for student support services in nursing, and approved local board training.
Okay, the consent agenda, I need a motion on that.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Payne, got a second from Ms. Davis, all in favor? Thank you very much, motion, okay, unanimous decision, motion passed. Item 7,
Yes, sir. Number 7 is to rescind all B policies adopted by the Board of Education on August 10th, 2017.
okay.
Those policies include BA, goals and objectives, policy BBA, board officers, regulation BBA-R, (1), close paren, nomination ballot for board officer elections, policy BBB, new member orientation, policy BBBC, board member development opportunities, policy BBBE, board member compensation and expenses, policy BBC, board committees, policy BBE, school attorney, policy BBF, advisory committees, policy BBFA, local school councils, and regulation BBFA-R, (1), close paren, local school councils. The recommendation is that the board proceed with action steps. The action steps include completing board governance training around the concept of balanced governance with Dr. Thomas Alsbury, complete governance training led by the superintendent in conjunction with the Carl Vinson Institute of Government, which you just approved with the consent agenda, and allow the superintendent to provide draft policies that align with our focus as a school system and best practices of school boards.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Means. To begin this process, I talked to our chairperson for the policy committee earlier this afternoon, and she did send out an email pertaining to what Dr. Means just finished talking about. I'm going to ask Ms. Ellis to read that email that you sent out in the event.
Do we need to make a motion and put this on the table for discussion before we discuss?
Robert's Rules of Order about council, but my understanding is that
We
you
have to have a motion and a second to be able to discuss it,
Okay,
right?
well, we'll do a motion, okay? Okay, all righty. I need a motion on that first, okay?
I move that we put the item number 7 on the agenda, on the table for discussion.
Okay.
That was right.
Hold on a second.
Why don't you just call for
Let the attorney explain exactly what we got to do. That's some other things involved.
Yeah, if you want to take action on this item tonight, to actually take action on the policies, you're going to need to suspend the rules by the 2/3 vote. So that would be the first motion, would be to suspend the rules so to take action on these policies without going back to the policies committee, putting out a 30-day notice and so forth. And if you just want to have a discussion and perhaps send it back through the policy committee, that would be then the rules, but if you want to actually take action, not need to suspend it.
And so the first order of business here, I'm going to call for a motion to suspend the rule on this.
So,
Moved by Ms. Davis, second by Ms. Payne. Okay? Now, all in favor of this, raise your right hand, please. No, okay, when you suspend the rule, I think it's not debatable. Okay. Now,
Point of information.
pardon?
Point of information, is this to suspend the rules to discuss all the changes in the big policy that are as listed in number 7?
I think right now we're suspending the rule. And once we suspend the rule, then the next step, we'll call for a motion pertaining to what you're saying, Dr. Lawrence, whether we're going to rescind all of the B policies or some of them.
I think this is, if I can just elaborate for a second, this is just a motion to suspend our normal procedural rules of sending any policy changes back through policy committee. So, once we suspend the rules, then the choices are, there are several choices, and,
That's right.
but we need to suspend the rules first in order to break procedure, I guess, and have it go back.
Thank you. Okay, now, I have a motion and a second to suspend the rule. And as I said, it's not debatable. Now, all in favor for suspending the rule, I need to see the raise of your right hand, please. That's a unanimous vote. Who did vote? Okay, sorry, I lost it again. Okay, all right, so 8-1 vote. Okay, so the rule's been suspended. Now, the next step that we're doing, Mr. Attorney.
So the next step would be a motion on whatever action any board member wants to propose. A second for that, then that motion will be debated.
Okay. Do we all understand that?
Yes.
Yeah, we can discuss that, okay? Now, we all understand what the attorney explained? Okay, I need a motion in terms of the B policies, whether you're going to rescind all of them or some of them.
Well, would it be appropriate for me to read my email now and then?
Okay, yes, go ahead and read your email. Yes.
So I sent an email to the board this afternoon after discussing with Mr. Worthy. I'll just read it. It's been suggested that we suspend the rules tonight to amend policy BBA. This would be in lieu of rescinding all of the B policies. But to suspend the rules tonight to amend policy BBA to state that this will not take effect until after the 2018 elections, whereby all current members of the Board of Education will be eligible to run for chair or vice chair in January 2018. It's my understanding that this discussion will take place under agenda item number 7. I've spoken with Mr. Pruitt, and he said that we are able to suspend the rules with a 2/3 vote if we would like. It is necessary to suspend the rules in an effort to not go back to policy committee due to time constraints. We will continue to improve our B policies in our work with Dr. Means. So I would like to make a motion to add a statement to policy BBA that states that all current members of the Board of Education will be eligible to run for chair or vice chair in January 2018.
Okay. What about that last sentence you read? Do you want to make that part of this motion or do it on a separate motion?
I would rather do it on a separate motion if that's okay, because I think this one is what's stated in the policy, and I don't think that that needs to be stated in the policy.
Make that motion one more time before I call for a second one, Ms. Ellis.
I would like to make a motion that we add a statement to policy BBA whereby all current members of the Board of Education will be eligible to run for chair or vice chair in January 2018.
Okay. Repeating what Ms. Ellis said, and I'm not going to say it verbatim. Her motion is to, she move that every member on this board can be nominated in December.
January, first meeting in January.
I said nominated. Nomination got to take place in December.
Oh, do they?
And then the voting can take place in January. Every member on this board, okay?
Correct.
That's the motion. Now, I need a second on that. Need a second. Second by Mr. Payne. Now, this is debatable. Any questions on it?
I would just like to make a statement. I said this at a previous meeting, and so I'll just say it again, because I think there may still be some confusion. First of all, the change in the B policy did not just, well, it was never, ever intended to become a personal change. It was not ever the intent of this board, and there were never any back conversations or any sort of anything like that. So it's incredibly, like, it's very painful to me because it's just so far from anything that would have ever been intended. But the change came from, we did a board development workshop when Dr. Parrish was interim. He brought in a gentleman named Mr. Glenn Brock from Atlanta. Mr. Brock looked at our B policies and emailed recommended changes that were then sent to the board, and that's where it came from. There are two people who were affected by policy BBA change, Mr. Worthy and myself. So it was never intended to be about a single person. It was intended to be a practice of leadership rotation. And it wasn't ever intended to be about one person. And it's a narrative that is very, very, very painful. But I think that, and I said it at our work session, I think it's become highly distracting. And as Dr. Means stated very, very clearly tonight, we have very important work to do in this community. And for all of our children. And we need to come up with a really, well, it's a multi-part thing right now because I believe that this is the right thing to do. I believe that it will remove the feeling that any one person or two people were affected by that policy change. But we are in the process of getting to work with Dr. Means on shared governance models and working differently as a board than we've ever worked in the past. And through that, there will be subsequent changes to the B policies. I would imagine a lot. He has shared with us examples of his B policies that he used in his previous district, and they have been distributed to the board members. And I think that we all look forward to that work and to doing that work with our superintendent. It was our intent with Dr. Parrish. It wasn't ill-intended, but I don't think in hindsight that we should have waited until Dr. Means got here to do work on our board policies. But with Dr. Parrish, he really wanted us to get ready for our new superintendent, was what we were trying to do. But I do look forward to doing this work together as a board and with our superintendent. So I hope I have provided some semblance of clarity to why we are where we are, and I do hope that this is a positive change that will allow this board and this community to move forward and to not spend more time on this topic and to be able to focus on the work with Dr. Means and for our children.
Thank you, Ms. Ennis. Okay, now any further, go ahead, Mr. Please.
I've got a question and then a comment. If I'm understanding it correctly, that this policy that was passed earlier stands, with the exception that we're essentially moving the effective date of this policy to after our election.
So it doesn't affect any two people who are currently sitting as chair and vice chair. It removes that completely, and it would start after new elections.
Okay. What my comment is I do think that the philosophy that was put forth in the policy committee of shared governance within the board was a good one, it's a sound one. Call it term limits. There are people who are opposed to it. I personally think that and I put this out there, and Charles says we can't do it because of state law. But I do question, and this means no disrespect to anyone, but I'm just speaking about myself. I think that my serving 2 terms on the board is plenty. Because to me, I need to make room for other people in the community. And to me, I'm getting my learning curve, and then my next term, I'll be at peak, and then someone else needs to take over. So that's how I look at it. And I know it's a personal opinion, and not everybody on the board feels that way. But I do think the philosophy of shared governance, of where the officers of the board are limited to 2 years, and then someone else does a position, I think is a solid, and I've heard a lot from the community of that being a positive thing. So with that understanding, with the answer to my question, I will support it.
Okay, well, you heard the motion earlier from Ms. Ellis. We got a second on that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
My comment is, after talking to Charles yesterday, I think we got a clear understanding of how we can proceed. Personally, this has been an emotional ride for me personally, because I think out of all the board members, I got most of the calls. I got most of the calls. I was going to use another word there. And it bothers me because, one, is we have been talking, but we never were able to move forward on board development and looking at terms. So now it comes this comes out, and I understand with the national issues nationally, it's a bad place. But I do think that Dr. Means has the experience. He's offered us a way that we should develop as a board. I feel so bad about those statistics and that data, but I feel worse that I have more people calling me about this policy than that data. I'm responsible for that data. I'm responsible. We as a board are responsible for that data. And nobody has really called me about that. This is about kids at the end of the day. And I can sit here and go on and on and on and on because I really have to try to do the best I could based on the information that we received. But with the shared governance model, I think that we're going to be better educated as a board, be better educated to make good decisions that are not threatening to anybody. If there was anything that I've done personally that people take it personal, I actually tell you, I'm sorry, but I am about the kids at the end of the day. And I think that going through a shared governance process, giving people the freedom to, or the right to run as we go through this process, that's why I'm going to support this policy. I would not even have said this if I had not already talked to Charles, but I feel comfortable with our conversation, and I support the motion.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms.
Just to
Richards.
add one other point of clarity too, this is not limiting anybody to one term. No matter what the policy states consecutive terms. So people can offer themselves for service again in the future. It's not a one-time opportunity to serve or ability to serve.
Okay, any further questions about the motion, Mr.?
No question. Again,
Mr.
this-
Davis, and then Mr. Davis.
Just a clarification. I appreciate the amendment. I understand the recommendation of the clause that you're adding, and it does absolutely remove that barrier and prevent Charles Williams from running across this good piece of happening. Again, without having that policy in front of me, I don't know that there are other things that I would be concerned about. What I want is an understanding that as we go forward, all of the new policies are still on the table to be evaluated in the context of our strategic plan and our shared governance model, meaning that everything gets looked at going forward. Am I clear on that?
That I didn't think was changed at all, and I think that we start that conversation with the tentative dates for our first board development training next month.
I simply want it to be reflected in this meeting, in this discussion around this item number 7.
I think, now that's the way I read it. If you need to hear it from somebody else, like the policy person, that's fine. But I read it that we are going to move forward on all the B policies, which we did state earlier. This was the one that was the controversial one.
Okay, let me, right now, we got a motion on the floor to be voted on. We've got the motion, we got a second, we've had discussion, and this is all about policy BBA, and we're gonna get to the remaining of the B policies. That's why I asked Ms. Ellis to read the last statement in her email today. We're gonna get to that once we took the motion. Okay, now any further questions pertaining to this motion? And the motion is that with policy BBA, that everybody on this board would have an opportunity to be nominated and also voted upon in January to become president or vice president. That's the motion. You have a question?
Yeah, just a point of clarification. One of our speakers did mention something that was incorrect, and that is that as written, the what could not be, that the person who's holding the position now could not be reelected to that position, but could be elected to an opposite position, vice president to president, vice president to vice president. But like I said, I will support the added.
Say that again?
I need to see the policy.
What, the BBA
Yes.
policy?
I guess I could take that.
Can you put it on the screen? If not, that's why I wrote my portfolio. You mean policy BBA?
Yes.
All right. Pass that down to Ms. Davis. It's on the screen. Now, the last sentence in that policy was struck, Ms. Davis. See my scratch through there? Yeah, because, like I said, that last sentence.
That was the sentence again, Mr. Worthy, that was the questionable one, the one that's in the blue, right?
But all of the questions, the one that I'm talking about, that struck out, that's the one I told you.
Okay. That's the one we talked about yesterday.
That's right.
Okay.
This is the policy that we adopted.
And so what's the change say now? Can you tell me what that change was that you read?
The motion was to add a statement that says all current members of the Board of Education are eligible to run for chair, president or vice president in 2018. And I would think that would probably go after that sentence highlighted.
So we would have to make okay.
That was the statement, it would say that we were voting, right? That's the original statement. The addition
We've read the motion. You want me to read it again?
Please read it again.
The motion was that all current members of the Board of Education will be eligible to run for, I said chair, but president or vice president in January 2018.
Okay, so it gets added to the end of that first paragraph, is that right?
Now, do we have any further questions about policy BBA? Any further questions? If we don't have any further questions, all in favor of the motion, show the right hand, please. Unanimous vote, motion passed. Now, let's go back to that last statement there, Ms. Ellis, because I heard some mumbling about that a few minutes ago in terms of all of the B policies. I know some of the B policies already been tabled. And according to what you read a few minutes ago, that yes, the remaining B policies, and I think Ms. Thornton mentioned it too, with our board governance, balanced governance, follow-up with Dr. Osbury, we're going to actually take a look at those B policies. And as I mentioned to you this afternoon, listen, I'll say it to the full board, I'm in favor of aligning some of the B policies with the policies that Dr. Means brought from Wisconsin. I've read, well, last time I talked about it, I said I've read them 3 times. I've probably read them 4 or 5 times now. But anyway, Ms. Ellis, would you?
Sure, I'm happy to restate it, but I have said it. Every single policy committee meeting, every single work session, and every single board meeting. But I will say it again so that it is reflected again in the minutes. And I really don't hold the keys to this. To be clear, the whole board holds the keys to this. It doesn't stop with Sarah Ellis. But we are going to work on all of the B policies in conjunction with Dr. Means and through our, I said shared governance earlier, but you're right, it's balanced governance training. And we are going to work as a board and I guess as a policy committee and as a board to amend our B policies to more closely reflect the work that Dr. Means would like to do with this board. And to reflect the governance of this board to be aligned to the strategic plan and through that process. But that has been stated every single meeting, and it is absolutely the work that this board is really, I can speak for myself, I'm yearning to get there. I'm ready to have this work. I'm ready to start. I'm ready to go. Dr. Means presented to us policies from his prior district, Mequon-Thiensville, that look dramatically different from the policies that Clarke County has. And I believe that is due in large part to the fact that the state of Georgia, if you look district to district, there are a lot of similarities with the language and the formatting. Most of them are pretty similar. And it was really nice to receive something from another state that was just completely a fresh take. And so I look forward to making sure that our policies are stronger. And Dr. Means has been a superintendent for 10 years, and it's tried and true. And so I really respect that he has done this work with his prior board, and it worked very well for them, and they were very successful. And so that means a tremendous amount to me, and I hope to other board members, and I look forward to incorporating his ideas in alignment with the Clarke County School District.
I'm sorry, hold on. Do you want to put that in the form of a motion?
It's not on the agenda to vote on, so I don't know that I can.
But
it's reflected in the minutes.
Hold on. I think I heard a few minutes ago from, especially from Ms. Davis now, she wants to be assured that that's going to happen. If we put that in the form of a motion, it goes in the minutes, then we're going to have to do it.
I'm gonna say, matter of fact, it should be in somewhere, someplace anyway. Because we deliberately, after we talked with Dr. Means, we deliberately put the brakes on everything. And that is part of the balanced governance training. I don't know, somewhere along the line, we are going to have to start building some trust amongst ourselves. Somewhere we're going to have to do that. But we have discussed this, we have put it down. Matter of fact, we stopped. We didn't do anything, but when the public spoke, we stopped. We went and checked in with Dr. Means, we stopped. And now we're back where, like almost where we started from. We know we're going to meet next month. We know that Dr. Means, I think next month. We're hoping to meet next month. But all of this was supposed to be part of that. But we're talking to this group of folk like that we have not discussed this before. No, I'm just saying, that's what it looks like. If somebody just comes in here right now, it looks like we had not discussed putting, not to do anything with the B policies.
No.
We agreed to that.
I wrote a letter that is I'm looking for it now on my email, but there's a letter that I wrote that we put in minutes in policy committee meeting that stated just that. Then we referenced it again last board meeting when we sat right here last month. I said it at the last work session. It's referenced in these minutes. I don't know, I think that our procedure is that policy committee reviews policies, and the way we decide what policies to review is that it either comes from changes in law or from board requests or parent community requests. And that's what we do, and that's the way we've always done it. This board has clearly spoken. It would be inappropriate at this point to not, and Dr. Means has spoken, it would be entirely inappropriate to not review the B policies. But it's also in meeting minutes after meeting minutes after meeting minutes. I'm going to refer to Mr. Pruitt here about voting tonight on that because it's not on our agenda. I don't care, I don't mind, but I want to make sure that we stay in
Yeah, I tend to agree.
procedure. But I'm going to look for that letter and I'll read it to the community and everything. I know y'all read it, but I can't find it.
Let me just add beyond that. You cannot restrict your own legislative power as a board anyway. So you can vote tonight, we're going to review all B policies and come back next month and say we're not going to. And you can flip-flop that every month if you want to. So there's really not much to be gained from that. As Clarke said, it's about, making a commitment to yourselves and the community, and you have to trust that.
So right now, what I'm hearing, we've had a motion for a BBA, and what I'm hearing, we have reached a consensus, and that was some information.
No, we haven't.
We just voted and.
Oh, BBA, I'm sorry. I'm just getting fuzzy.
But anyway, I'm here now, we're going to go with the general consensus that with the remaining B, some of the B policies already have been taken. And the ones that Dr. Means read a few minutes ago, I'm hearing that we have reached a consensus that yes, without the second part of our retreat with Dr. Osbury, we are going to do further discussion with those B policies. And I also have heard, and I said, and I heard Ms. Ellis said it, that we're going to try to align some of those the policies that Dr. Means brought from Wisconsin with the B policies. That's what I'm hearing, Ms. Ellis. Do we have consensus on that?
No.
I was under the impression when Dr. Osbury comes down, we are going to talk about board governance and shared governance, but it will not be reviewing the policies. Once we have that knowledge, and the policy committee would review based on the knowledge we glean from all this training and consensus of how we come out of that, how we want to govern as a board, that we will go back to policy and start reviewing them, because it's going to take a lot of work.
My understanding is very similar, that we would build our policy based on our model of shared governance that we developed.
Balance.
And our balance and shared governance that we developed retreat and our building a strategic plan, endorsing the strategic plan. And from that, we would evaluate our policies in terms of how are they supporting that for our children. For our children. So yes,
Okay, well, I'm fine.
I'd like to just get rid of number 7.
We don't have to vote on it. It's recorded in the minutes now. When we come back now, I don't want people to come back and say, well, no, we didn't say that. Go ahead, Mr. Davis.
I think it's critical that when we do board training, that Dr. Means can go in the direction that he feels his board needs to go. You know, and that's now, the last two speakers have made a little bit more sense to me. But this idea that we're going to go to a board retreat and look at the policies that Dr. Means worked under, the board policies he worked under or evaluated or viewed in Wisconsin compared to our policies, that's not what the board training is about.
You're right.
Unless Dr. Means says otherwise. If he thinks that that's the way to go, so be it. But that is not that's not where we started with the first training. And so I want to make sure that Dr. Means has complete freedom to do, because we've taken forever to have his second training, because we still don't have a date. I just want to make sure that he has a free hand to take this board where he thinks we need to go and what precious time we've got to get there.
And Carol, what Carol said is exactly right, and is that we are going to work on our training as a board. We've lacked board development for years, and so I think we're all looking forward to board development. And to work with Dr. Means and Dr. Osbury, and then as we learn better board function, to then craft our policies and work on our policies.
I don't have any problem with that. It's just that we know that we're going to do some additional work on the B policies. Now tell me when. Because we didn't vote to send it back to the policy committee. I want someone to tell me when.
We do whatever we want to through the process.
Okay, all right.
We always have that process. If we want to go through the process, it's always there.
And you're not suggesting that it goes back to.
I didn't suggest that.
Oh, okay.
I did not suggest that. I said, when are we going to do it?
Well, yeah.
Well, what Mr. Biden said, that's fine, whatever we decide. But I want to make sure that we are going to do it.
And let me just say that I would be willing for us to, I want us to at least put a caveat in that we will not do this until we complete our training, our board governance.
It would be silly. we need work.
And that was the issue all along, because whatever policy on the table is what we're operating under until we get back.
Okay.
And so I think we have a healthy policy on the table now for 2018 until we get back. Good.
Thank you very much. So we're ready to move the agenda? Dr. Means, item 8. Yeah, Barbara Street property.
Everything else is ice skate now.
Thank you, Mr. Worthy, for the opportunity to talk about agenda item number 8. It is the recommendation of our administrative team that the board, it's our recommendation that the Board of Education approve the intergovernmental agreement to transfer ownership of the Barber Street property to the Unified Government of Athens, Clarke County upon the terms and conditions set forth in the agreement. It is further recommended the board approve final negotiations between the two governmental entities as to wording and technical issues in the agreement.
Okay, you heard the recommendation from Dr. Means, and this is on the Barber Street property. I'm not going to read it. Hopefully you read it in the packet. I'll entertain a motion on that. Moved by Ms. Thornton. Got a second from Ms. Ellis. Any questions pertaining to the Barber Street property? Any questions? Go ahead.
No questions. We need to know that.
All right. Any questions? All in favor? Motion passed. Thank you very much. Dr. Means?
Mr. Worthy, board members, it's our recommendation that the board approve the personnel recommendations and change the job description of a new position. That's a recommendation, sir.
Okay, recommendation from the superintendent on personnel that was sent to you in your packet, and also you had a new job description in there. Need a motion on that? Moved by Mr. Payne, seconded by Ms. Davis. All in favor? Thanks very much. Motion.
Mr. Davis, would you like
If I did, I did.
I think
Got to raise your hand high down there, Mr. Davis. Okay, motion to adjourn. Moved by Ms. Davis. Got a second from Ms. Thornton. All in favor? Y'all have a nice